everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by my pal, Doominal Crossing. Doom, you had a long day yesterday. How you doing?
Doing very good. I worked from 8:30 in the morning yesterday to 10 o'clock p.m., a very, very long shift. But boy, am I going to enjoy that overtime pay when that check hits.
I think everybody listening wants me to ask you this question, Doom. What the heck kind of thing are you doing from 8:30 to 10:30 at night?
Well, so my current job is I announce pretty much all of my college sporting events, and the last couple of days we had a big volleyball tournament going on, and so it was just game after game after game of me, announcing and commentating those games, and so yeah, that's basically what I currently do for a living, and I honestly I love the job, despite how exhausting yesterday was. It's a really filling job. I really enjoy what I do, and speaking of checks, looks like I am not going to be paying any student loans because Dark Brandon pulled up a few days ago, and did not expect that legislation to go as hard as it did. I was expecting maybe a few more months more pause on the loan payments, which we got that too, but then also anybody who applies who has student loans will get up to $10,000 canceled. And this is the key thing right here. If you're a Pell Grant recipient, that doubles to $20,000, which I am a Pell Grant recipient. And my loans are less than $20,000, which means I don't have any debt to pay once I actually sign up for this program. And so we're still waiting to hear more about when that will go up. But yeah, I got to say, man, this has been a week of dubs, and your boy's loving it.
Yeah, fantastic news. And I say that as someone with no loans or debts to pay off, but I was extremely happy to see that. They should have canceled it all of it, every last bit.
I agree. I 100% agree. And obviously, Biden was never going to do anything like that.
Yeah, but
considering
you know what?
Considering where my expectations were,
exactly,
this very much exceeded it. And so
yeah,
I'm very happy with this.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. I had a bunch of long conversations with a couple friends of mine about this, but let's not get too far down this path. The last time that we got quote unquote political, a bunch of twerps were all up in our reviews and whatever. But I mean, it's nothing but a W. Doesn't hurt anybody. Helps people. Awesome. Love to see it. It's been it's been a pretty good week. And I guess that this is a different kind of W, but it's still a W. It's an Omega Metroid W, anyways. If you are gonna play AM2R anytime in the next little bit, head on over to the website, because I found myself with a little bit of free time last week, and I was like, I've made maps for almost every Metroid game, but I haven't done one for AM2R, and I put one together and put it up, and it's there. If any of you guys want to play it, it'll show you a full 100% every expansion, every Metroid, every hidden area, so go and check it out. We had the guys over at the official AM2R account retweet the map, which is very cool. So if you are itching to go back to SR388, make sure to take us with you. People were shocked that I've made all the maps that you see on Omega Metroid, and I've made them all with MS Paint, like old school 1998 MS Paint.
You absolute mad lad, Andy. When you were talking about that in chat, I actually gasped out loud. How could you do that to yourself?
Well, so it's actually quite easy, traditionally speaking. Because all the Metroid maps were on a 2D grid, so I just made a grid, and you can fill in the squares and connect them and outline them and whatever. I don't know. I've always liked schmucking around in MS Paint, so I thought that was kind of fun. But the challenge came in with Metroid Dread, which has not the grid maps. It has the little boxes that have the different shaped rooms inside of them. That was tough, and will never ever be using MS Paint to make a map like that ever again. So I don't know. A bunch of people were shocked about when they heard that. So I don't know. I guess I just like kicking it old school, man. What can I say?
I just think they want to make your workload easier. I mean, you work hard enough as it is, you know. And just hearing that was just like my poor boy.
I don't. I feel like I'm a little bit sick and twisted. Like I actually had like a fun time making the AM2R map in MS Paint. I don't know. Maybe that says that there's something deeply wrong with my psyche or something. But I don't know.
Maybe it just means you love AM2R, which I mean, that's
I do.
certainly
Yeah.
not a wrong opinion to hold in these parts.
Yep, I absolutely do love AM2R. I actually just finished yesterday playing the latest ROM hack review for Omega Metroid's Patreon page, which, by the way, you can sign up for patreon.com/Omega Metroid. ROM hack reviews is a series where I play ROM hacks of the different Metroid games and review them, so go figure. But I've just finished my first Zero Mission ROM hack, and by the time that you guys are listening to this episode, that ROM hack review will have released yesterday. So I had a really good time with that, and because I'm going on my trip pretty soon to Europe, I'm getting a head start on next month. So actually, as soon as we're done this, I'm gonna bust into some more Metroid tonight, and it's another Game Boy Advance ROM hack review. So very much looking forward to that.
Very much so. And consider well, I don't want you to spoil it here, but I'm very interested in seeing your reactions to that for sure.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay, we're gonna have a lot of fun today because we are doing a definitive ranking. That's right, a definitive ranking of the final areas in each mainline Metroid game. And we're going to rank them. Well, we don't really have any set criteria, but I guess I'll explain to you my criteria, and you can, base that. You could take that if you want to. You could throw it out or whatever. But the way that I'm going to rank my final areas is like, A, are they challenging? Like, are they challenging final areas? Is there something rewarding there? Or is there a critical story element that happens in them that makes them really stand out? Is there a uniqueness to them that, this area offers something that no other area in the game offers? Is the atmosphere just like off the charts, like an incredible, dangerous, creepy kind of vibe? And I guess intangibles too, something that we can't really define, but maybe something that makes a certain area pop that is unique to that certain area. So that's how I'm going to be ranking my decisions here. Does that kind of sound more or less like along the same lines you were thinking, Doom?
Yeah, I think the way I rank final areas, it all depends on the context. Like, I don't think the final area necessarily needs to be a challenge, like, with the exception of the final boss,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. But like the area as a whole, it's for me, it's mostly about like the atmosphere and the tension and the build up,
Right.
and how it correlates in the game, how tonally representative it feels, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff.
So one thing that I am kind of doing, but kind of not. So we actually just did this exact same gimmick on the Zelda cast where we ranked all the final like castles in the Zelda series and all of the like non-castles in the Zelda series. And so one thing that I did there that I think I'm going to try and do here as well is I'm going to kind of separate as much as I can the final boss fight from like the actual area, because I feel like the final boss fight can stand on its own in a lot of areas. And obviously, it's important to a final area because a lot of these final areas are smaller and they're not that big, and they're really just an excuse or exercise to get you to that final boss. But I'm gonna try and separate them as much as I can, if that makes sense. I don't know if you're gonna do the same thing or not, but
I 100% agree with that.
okay.
Solely because I think you can do like an entirely separate definitive ranking of final bosses, like in its own tiers.
Right, and I
So
actually think we have. I'm sure if we were to look on OmegaMetroid.com, that episode probably exists somewhere. But so yeah, we're gonna try and separate them a little bit here, and we're doing a definitive ranking style. So for everybody that does not know what that means, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to list off. I think at random. I'm going to list off at random a final area. Doom and I are going to talk about it, and we're going to rank it. The first one's going to be ranked number 1 because it's the only one there. And then when I list off a second area, we're going to either rank it above or below the first one that we talked about. The third area is going to be either 1, 2, or 3, etc., 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 all the way down the list. And we're going to eventually reach a final ranking here. And I typically, when I make these lists, or when we do shows like this, I don't actually make my own list until like, well, a lot of times I don't actually in general. So I true to my word, I did not do that. I don't really know what I'm gonna have ranked as number 1. I don't really know actually even what I'm gonna have ranked as last. So we're gonna kind of make this up
I
as we go.
I have a feeling I know what my number one pick is going to be, but I don't know what the the concept of a full list is going to look like at all.
Yeah, I'm looking at these. I'm looking at these places, and I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to be number one or not, but I guess we should just get going, and we'll see. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Let's go. Well, I feel like it's appropriate to start with the area that truly began it all, and that, of course, is Torian from Nestroid. And I think I'm going to be ranking this one pretty high in the list. Because I do think that this area does have a lot to offer. First of all, it's definitely a dangerous, creepy area. It's the area where you first finally see the Metroids. They've been teased throughout the entire game. You've heard a lot about them, and there they finally show up, and they are scary, and they're sucking the life out of you. And there's a bunch of different Metroids, and you kind of have to, even more than in Super Metroid, I feel like in Nestroid, you really have to proceed with caution. Like, you can't be too, like, guns a-blazing here, or else you're gonna get zapped by a Metroid. And so you kind of have to, like, slowly stock up, look around, shoot, freeze, and slowly, like, creep forward. It's kind of like a war of attrition where, like, every inch that you get feels earned. So I really like that. The area, I mean, visually, it is what it is. It kind of fits with the rest of Nestroid, but I do kind of think it has that, like, cold, derelict steel feeling to it because of the colors that they use. Music is, again, kind of, is what it is. It's pretty good. And I do think that, well, I'm trying to separate the final boss battle. I think that the Mother Brain fight aside, going up to Mother Brain is, like, very cool with all, like, the turrets and the Rinkas and the Zebatites at you. It's like this incredible obstacle course that you have to go through. It's challenging, it's dangerous, the mood is there, the atmosphere is there. So I think that this one is going to actually end up ranking pretty decently highly for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of that for sure. I know we have very different opinions on NES Troid, but just the area as a concept, I've always loved, especially because of the juxtaposition of, the rest of this game, you're crawling through these natural cave formations or maybe ancient architecture. And then for the final area, it's this high tech, state of the art, as you mentioned, cold, derelict, steel death trap filled with, the game's namesake that would become a very important lore element later
Mm-hmm.
on. And the challenge is definitely present there. The music, I actually really enjoy the music, and I think it's one of the great examples of that original Metroid musical template sent by Tanaka-san. I'm not going to go into that whole spiel again. I've gone into that in enough episodes in a row as it is, but so yeah.
Yeah, I think that the music is, like, less is more. Like, it's creepy, it's awkward, but it fits the area. So yeah, I think that it does a really good job here, and yeah, it's gonna rank, I think decently high. I can't say if I think it's gonna be like the tippy top, but I think it's gonna be in the upper echelon for my personal list. But of course, when we're doing this type of list, there's a bit of negotiation involved. So you have to give a little to get a little. So
Yeah, we don't have a tiebreaker vote today, so
no, we don't. So we'll see. Do you want to pick the next area, just a random area from any of the games, or
yeah,
do you want me
sure.
to?
Yeah, sure. I just played Metroid Prime Hunters fairly recently, so I think it's fair for our next area. Let's jump a little bit to 2006 and talk about the Oubliette.
The oubliette. All right. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't have much to say about this. Man, the last time I beat Hunters was probably about four. Oh no, how long has this podcast been going on? Because I played Hunters when we started this podcast, and I think, unfortunately, I don't remember much of it, and I think that probably says a lot. But again, I can't say that I'm, like, the biggest fan of Metroid Prime Hunters necessarily in the first place, so I think that probably influences my opinion on it. So I don't have a lot. I remember the final boss fight fairly distinctively, but the actual area, I'll probably defer to you, Doom. So take it away.
Yeah, again, I think this is a really cool area in concept, but just because of kind of how the single player is played out, it's a very small area. I wish it was a
Hmm.
bit longer, that you could get to do more exploring. there's a really cool piece of foreshadowing where there's this really cool morph ball tunnel that you go to in one of the second to last rooms before the Goria fight, that will lead you to an energy tank. And if you look through one of the windows, you can actually see the arena where you'll fight the second Goria phase if you do the code sequence with your weapons,
Hmm.
which I think is really cool. And I just love the art direction in this area in general, which is another reason why I'd love to see more of the areas extrapolated. Otherwise, though, yeah, there isn't really much to say. There's some scannable lore that you can check out, but it's mostly just stuff that was regurgitated earlier on in the game. It reuses the same music from the kind of the boss chamber rooms before you fight the other bosses. So there
Hmm.
isn't really an original piece of music to associate with it, but I still really like it. But I'm gonna rank this a little bit lower than the Torian from earlier.
I think so. Maybe I should have done a quick refresher here, but I also feel like I'm looking at this list of final areas, and I can look at almost every single place here, and I distinctly remember like that area. And I think that if you look at an area like the oubliette here, and you cannot remember it, I think that that really says a lot. So it's gonna rank fairly low for me. It's not gonna be last. I'll tell you that. I think in kind of looking at this list, I've decided what is going to be last, and it's not going to be that. So, at least it's got that going for it. But yeah, I can't say that I'm going to be, fighting for it to be above too many other final areas if we're being honest. Which is too bad. But I also think that just like and I don't think I'm alone in this. Like I think that a lot of people like when they think of single player and Prime Hunters just kind of it has a bit of a stink on it, and that kind of rubs off on some of the different areas. At least it does for me. So that might be why I'm not gonna necessarily champion for it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm due for a replay just to see if
I
it
definitely
if it can
think
surprise me.
I mean, again, I definitely agree. It's one of the weaker Metroid campaigns for sure. I'm not gonna fight on that. But like again, after playing it recently, I was surprised how much fun I was having with it, despite some of those setbacks. Which I will
Hmm.
absolutely acknowledge the several setbacks that campaign has.
Yeah. Well, let's go from that one and let's do a heavy hitter. How about that?
Okay.
So originally, I was just going to include Iterash as the final area of Metroid Dread, but I feel like perhaps we should include Hanubia as well, because that's like the surface area, and I feel like they kind of are two parts of the same whole. So we can include both of them together, maybe, or I don't know. I mean, you could
I think
make a
that's fair, and they're
I,
both really small areas too. So
yeah, like they're definitely not very big, and the escape sequence does take place in Hanubia, so I think that it should have some inclusion there. I mean, Iterash is really just a big ship, and you go and I think there's about 3 rooms, and you have to lay a power bomb, and you can go and fight Ravenbeak right away. So there's not really much to it. There's a little bit more to Hanubia, and it is pretty cool when you finally do get to the surface. The whole game you've been trapped in the depths of ZDR, and you've been slowly working your way up to the surface, and you finally get there. And I think that there are some pros and cons of this area. The pros are, the atmosphere I feel like is very cool. It's you can see in the background like the sky, and you're like, oh, there's my ship. You do have a pretty cool boss battle with the golden Chozo warrior. But the downfalls I do feel like are pretty substantial as well, in that the music doesn't really pop. You have the Emmy fight, which isn't really an Emmy fight at all. It triggers a cool cutscene, and there's definitely some story implications there, but it's not. I've always kind of said like I wish that you could have fought the Emmy. I think if you could have, this would rank like really high for me. But you just fight another Chozo spear warrior, and it's kind of like, all right, we've been there, we've done that. So that's a little bit disappointing. There's not really a whole lot in terms of like expansions in Hanubia. I think that there's about 3 or 4. Although one of them is kind of a cool Shine Spark puzzle where you like go through and then you got to go Shine Spark down, and like that's kind of neat. But not really enough here to make it like an upper echelon final area. I think it's I think when it's all said and done, I'm probably gonna rank this like somewhere in the middle. I think. Yeah, I think that's where it's going to be for me. In our current list, I would rank it number one Torian, number two Hanubia and Iterash, and number three Oubliette.
Yeah, that's going to be my rankings as well for sure, and for many of the same reasons you listed here. I feel like for the most part we're like pretty like in tandem on our opinions so
We're
far.
in
Although,
sync today. I like it.
yeah, I'm sure that's going to change later. I have a feeling there's always something that we're going to get caught
Yeah.
up on later. But for now, like we seem to be rocking it together, which hey, I like it. I like the truce for now.
You know what? I have kind of an idea here. What are we at? If we have a little bit of time left over, should we throw in the genetics laboratory from AM2R just as a little bonus as well? Do you think we
I
could
don't
cheat and do that?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's your podcast, it's your rules, and I'm certainly not opposed to some AM2R talk.
Okay, well we'll see where we're at, but I'm gonna put it on the list, and we'll see if we can get there or not. But okay, so yeah, so we've got number one, we've got Torian from NES Troid, we've got Hanubia at number two, and we've got Oubliette from Metroid Prime Hunters at number three. I was fascinated to see how many times I can mispronounce that word. I think I've done pretty good so far.
So far, I believe
So
it's
far.
oubliette. I believe it's oubliette,
Oh,
not oubliette. But I mean, I don't quote me. I don't know that for sure. I probably should
uh,
have looked that up before the podcast. But yeah,
there you go. All right, Doom. What area do you want to do next?
let's do. Hmm. You know what? We were just talking about the genetics lab. Why don't we do the other Metroid 2 remake that Mercury Steam gave us from Samus Returns? Two
Okay,
Mercury Steam titles back to back.
there you go. So before we went live with the podcast, Doom and I were chatting, and we were kind of saying like, so, while some games have very distinct final areas, like the Impact Crater, like Torian, etc., some games don't necessarily have that. And I feel like Samus Returns is one of the games that does not necessarily have a super distinct final area. Because of course, after you defeat the Metroid Queen, you do your you can make your escape, but you can also go back and you can get like the 100% of the game, etc., which I guess is true of also of Hanubia, which we just talked about. But we also threw Iterash in there, which is basically like a point of no return. So all that to say is that the final area of Samus Returns is a little bit harder to define. But what I would define the final area as is the surface of SR388 after you've beaten the Metroid Queen, and you go up, and the sky's like dark green, and it looks very, very cool. Very cool. But you essentially traverse up. I think that there's even an expansion along the way, and you have the baby Metroid with you, which is awesome. Shout out to the baby Metroid, by the way, for doing so well in Summer of Metroid Madness tournament. I was not expecting that.
Baby
But
Metroid really was the underdog pick. Like
yeah, also
it went
shout out to
places.
Samus for winning. I mean, I think Mr. Magoo could have seen that coming, but still. So anyways, so you have the baby Metroid with you. The sky looks awesome. The music is kind of creepy and intense, but the area itself is so small and so minuscule that there's not really much to it. And then of course you trigger the fight with Proteus Ridley basically right away. So I think that in terms of aesthetics and like the clouds always really stick with me. I think that dark green cloud looks so awesome, but there's not really a whole lot to this area. Even calling it an area is kind of a stretch because it's like you've been here before, but I also don't think that you can realistically say that like the Queen's Nest is the final area of this game either. So I'm not really sure how I would rank this one. You could probably convince me here to
I
lean.
feel like you could combine the Queen's area with like those final rooms in the surface that you haven't visited as you're traversing back to your ship
Okay.
before you actually get to that Ridley fight. I feel like those can all like be encompassed as one final area for me personally.
Okay. Yeah. You could probably convince me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's not technically labeled as that on the map, because I
Yeah.
feel like they work so well in tandem. And there's no like elevator connecting the two either.
Yeah. I mean that is true. I will say that I think the nest area in Samus Returns, I actually think it might be the weakest of the three Metroid 2 games, in my personal opinion. And I think that the boss fight is also. The boss fight is better than Metroid 2, but I think it's worse than AM2R. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where I would rank this one. What do you think here?
This is one of my least favorite areas in all the Metroid games, so this one's going at the bottom of my current list. I'm going to be very real. Back when we talked about in our definitive ranking episode of Samus Returns, I had some, let's say, some contentious opinions perhaps on some of my opinions of the game. Even though I still very much enjoy it, it's a quality Metroid title that everyone should play. I do have some disagreements with the direction that Mercury Steam took this, and I think that this final area that we're conglomerating is kind of a really good focal point on some of my problems with Mercury Steam's interpretation. And that, one thing I love about Metroid 2 is kind of how, as you progress further through the game, there's less and less enemies. That's telling the story of how the Metroids are, kind of like the apex predator of SR388.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that was intentional or not, or whether this was just a result of the Game Boy's limited hardware, not really unsure, but I think it's a really cool interpretation of that game. And I was hoping that Mercury Steam would go with that interpretation, kind of like what AM2R did to an extent as well, but they didn't. And instead, there's just enemy after enemy after enemy, and they're not like hard enemies either. They're just kind of there, and it really, for me, it disrupts the flow, and it really kind of takes out about what makes Metroid 2 so special for me, what makes it stand out amongst all of the other Metroid games. And it's all in that final area where it's at its most important for that to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just overall just not a fan of this area in general, with the exception of that sick Torian arrangement. We talked about this with Lacey, but that's my favorite of the Torian arrangements personally. But that aside, I'm not a fan of this area personally.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't know if I could sit here and say that I think that it's worse than Oubliette, but I can't say that it would be very high on my final list either. So I'll tell you why. I'm willing to rank this beneath Oubliette for some future considerations. How about that?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Okay, so we got our list so far. Torian is still number one. Hanubia and Itarash is number 2, Oubliette is number 3, and the surface of SR388 from Samus Returns is number 4. So I guess it's my turn to pick what we're doing here. And let's see, a lot of these I have like very distinct weird feelings on, and I think I want to pick another one that I have a distinct weird feeling on, and that is the Sky Temple from Metroid Prime 2. Because on one hand, this is another area it's very small. There's not a whole lot to it, but just by virtue of getting there, I think that it does feel like very rewarding and very cool. Because of course you've had to go through and get all the Sky Temple keys, which is like a massive pain in the ass throughout the game. Probably the worst part of Metroid Prime 2, actually. So when you finally accomplish that and you get there, it's just like, yes, this is awesome. The area itself, I think that the music is like, it's okay. But the aesthetic of it, I think, is very cool. It's like this creepy, corrupted version of the temple that you've been going to for the whole game, like the temple grounds. And it's got like, one of the things I feel about Metroid Prime 2 that holds it back a little bit for me, just in terms of like what I like in a Metroid game, is like when you go to the Dark World, it all kind of feels the same, no matter if you're in the Torvus Bog, no matter if you're in the Ing Hive, no matter if you're in, the Aegon Waste, whatever. And I feel like, unfortunately, the Sky Temple kind of has that same thing going on, where it looks like it could be, in a room out of any of those areas that I just mentioned in the game. It's kind of got like the same dark purple aesthetic to it that doesn't really make it stand out to me, which I think is like a fairly important thing in a final area. Which brings it down a little bit for me. But I guess like if you want to include the escape sequence there, that also kind of brings it up a little bit for me, because I think that's one of the best escape sequences in the series, just because like there's actual stakes and it's intense and it's like you got another fight going on. And I guess technically speaking, the Emperor Ing isn't the final boss, so you can include that fight in there as well, which is a cool fight. So I feel like I'm conflicted on this, because I feel like there's a lot of things I like, there's a lot of things I don't like, and I'm not really sure. I feel like I could be swayed one way or the other here about where to put this. So what do you think, Doom? As our list currently stands right now, where is it going?
Well, first off, before we go into that, I think that's another definitive ranking we could do is a definitive ranking of escape sequences. I think that's just ripe for a good episode in the future. But going back on topic, if we're solely talking about the Sky Temple as a final area, I think it's fairly weak. But I also, in the context of Metroid Prime 2, I don't think Metroid Prime 2 really needed like a big final area as well. I feel like that Emperor Ing fight, that is like the big showcase. That is the reward for, and I almost feel like that Sky Temple key hunt, that kind of acts as like a final area of sorts, if that makes sense as well. And considering again with echoes and the dark light world trapping, because of all the, you're essentially doubling the amount of areas because of that alone. I don't think that, again, that the game really needed a final area. And there's actually some really cool artistic direction as well. So typically what the game will do, is it'll do a pretty fairly copied version of the room from the light world, but it has the dark world aesthetic to it. Maybe some things are rearranged. However, once you get to the Sky Temple, the rooms are actually flipped upside down. So after you go into the teleporter, it's actually an upside down version of that light controller room that Umos is in the light world. It's a really cool aesthetic change. It's very subtle. I'm not sure if most people would catch on to it, but and then the place where you screw attack, that's an upside down version of where you take that elevator
Right.
to go to that room too. And so yeah, very very small subtle changes, but ones that I really appreciate nonetheless. I think it's a cool attention to detail there. But again, that's just in the context of Metroid Prime 2, and I think for that game it works perfectly. However, we are ranking final areas, and as a final area, it's really not much.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably gonna rank this somewhere. I'm probably gonna rank it above Samus Returns, but below Oubliette for me personally.
Okay. I think I was gonna rank it. I think I was gonna rank it below Hanubia, but above Oubliette, which I think. I think let's call it even. Let's do that because I don't think that I could, in good conscience, rank this worse than Metroid Prime Hunters. So now we're even. Now we're back to square one. So the new negotiations can begin. So we got Torian at number one, Hanubia at number two, Sky Temple number three, Oubliette at number four, and the nest slash surface area of SR388 at dead last, which I'm surprised at actually. Okay, so that was my pick. I had conflicting feelings. Doom, what do you give us your pick and let's see you start off here.
Let's talk about your favorite Metroid title of all time, Super Metroid Torian.
Yeah, okay, I'm down. Well, I want you to go first because I have a lot of thoughts on this one. So you take us for the lead, and I'll come in behind and clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up.
Absolutely. I feel like there's really not much in terms of the area itself to offer that, couldn't already be said in NES Troid. I'd say it's a little easier just based on, how much more accessible Super's movement is compared to NES Troid, but it still has a lot of those same themes going on.
Yeah,
You have the new arrangement of the Torian theme from NES Troid, one of those few recurring themes from the original game, which I think is a pretty cool reference there. But of course, you also have one of the most important story segments in
mm-hmm.
the entire series, let alone Super Metroid itself, with the baby Metroid, now the Super Metroid, recognizing Samus and
Yeah.
without a single word of dialogue spoken, bringing a tear to my eye every time I see that play out. It's such I still don't know how they managed to pull that off in that era. And I don't know if we can count that as part of ranking the area or not, since
Oh,
it's
of
kind of
course.
irrelevant. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think I mean it happens in the final area. It's a big story development that's tied to the. I think like that's crucial to ranking Torian from Super Metroid for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Metroid isn't really known for being a story-heavy series. It's more
Hmm.
of a lore-heavy series. But this is like one of those. Again, it's such a small story development that has such a huge impact. And yeah, I feel like if we're gonna rank it that alone, I feel like that alone puts this area on quite a bit of a higher pedestal than it would normally for me. So
Yeah.
um,
I agree.
I
Like I
think I Or sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, I think if you're looking at this final area, it really has it all because it's kind of a more fleshed out version of the NES version of Torian. Well, and while it's not quite as cold and dark and steely, it's still fairly like it definitely has that element of danger in it because you have Metroids swarming at you from all over the place. Um, you definitely do have to proceed with caution, and you do get to the point where you have that incredible Super Metroid interaction where it's like, that's a big part of the story, and it pays off the story from earlier in the game that pays off later in the final boss fight. It's a very touching moment when the Metroid realizes who you are. It's not, it's longer than Nestroid, but it's not too long, and you do have the same kind of area in the final stages before Mother Brain, where you've got the Rinkas and the turrets and the Zebatites and everything's going crazy. And I think that this area has it all. Actually, I would be
Yeah,
inclined to rank it
I think
on our
this is
list
gonna
as
go.
it stands. It's number one.
Yeah, it's going at the top of my list for sure.
Yeah,
For what we have so far, at least.
yeah, and I don't know if it's gonna end there, but really, like when we listed our criteria, you kind of go down and like check. Like this area checks a lot of those boxes, and that's taking out the final boss fight, which I think is something that a lot of other areas like don't necessarily do all that. You know what? Let's go to another area that I want to talk about, and that's kind of an example of what I mean. And this is another heavy hitter. So are you ready for this? Let's talk about
Let's
the
go.
impact crater from Metroid Prime.
Hmm.
So this is an area that really is, it's really only one room, it's one big room. I guess there's a couple rooms before it, but like really and truly there's only one room, and it's designed to get you up to Metroid Prime. So I feel like the Metroid Prime fight is an integral area, or an integral part, sorry, to this area, which is kind of like a strength of Torian and Super Metroid, is that like you can have the area but completely separated almost from the final boss fight, I feel like. But anyways, talking about the impact crater, that being said, it is only one room, but it's a hell of a room. It's like, it feels like and I mean it is. It's a ginormous area that requires a lot of the player, so a lot of very precise platforming. And I think I speak for everybody that's ever played Metroid Prime in the history of Metroid Prime. We're like, God damn those fission Metroids! God,
Thank God for the power bombs in this area. Oh, they
no
are
kidding.
lifesavers.
Oh my God, these things are dreadful. Dreadful. Like, and so for anybody that doesn't know or maybe doesn't remember, the fission Metroids are Metroids that pop out, and you have to use you're not like regular Metroids. You can't just freeze them, missile them, and then they're done. No, you have to hit them with one or two charge shots, and then they will split into two separate Metroids that are color coded to let you know which beam you got to use to get rid of them. And these little bastards are everywhere, and you're trying to jump on like these very small platforms as you're going up throughout this ginormous room in the impact crater. It's just like, ah. So yeah, they are the worst. But I mean, no, this area is awesome. It has like the aesthetic is very cool. It looks corrupted. It looks it really strikes like the red that's everywhere, like the pulsating blood red. That is permeating throughout the area. It looks very cool. I don't remember the music off the top of my head, but I feel like it's fine. I wouldn't say it's like I remember the Torian theme like no tomorrow, but I can't say that I remember this one just thinking of it right now. But it's not a bad theme by any means. But I don't think that it can rank like at. I think it could be in like an upper echelon. I don't think it could challenge for like the top spot necessarily because there's not that much to it. But I do think that it's like definitely a really solid final area that has the tone, it has the danger, it has the enemies. So I think that for me it's like an upper echelon area. I don't know. What do you think, dude?
I love this area so much, despite how small it is, and I think that says a lot of just how cool it is, despite the fact that it's literally only 4 rooms in total. You have the room you spawn in, you have a hallway that connects to the Tower of Pain, as I like to call it. Actually, no, technically 5 rooms if
There's
you
a save
count
room
the
there.
the missile recharge station.
Or yeah, miss.
Yeah, and then you have the spider ball tracks that lead to the prime fight. But yeah, um, Can I talk about the music for a moment? Because I love this theme
Of
so much.
course.
It's not a melodic theme at all. But again, to me, like this is like quintessential Metroid music. This is like this is again the blending of the diegetic and the non-diegetic interpretations into one cohesive track that makes it hard to tell which is which. You have percussion beats that are created from synths that sound like Geiger counters, from the organic pads that comprise the title theme. They
Yeah.
reappear in this again, and it all comes together so beautifully. I
You know
love
what?
this area so much.
I quickly, I felt like I was doing a little bit of a disservice, so I quickly just YouTubed the theme again. It is very like, it's not a theme, you're right, but it's like very unsettling sounds, like you're growling or something like that. It has that sense of danger for sure.
Yeah, danger, corruption, chaos, like everything about it seems off. You mentioned the red phazon aesthetic. I'm actually really disappointed this never returned in a future prime because I loved that concept of like phazon radiating so high that even your phazon suit, the one thing that that you can rely to protect on you, even that can't save you from this kind of corruption. I thought at least it would return in another area we'll talk about later, but nonetheless, I really love it how it's utilized in this area, and yeah, I think I'm gonna rank this as my number two choice so far. I really just love this area. I think that one room alone, the Tower of Pain, just makes so
Right.
much of an impact.
I was thinking that it was either going to be number two or number three, and I think that I can say I'm fine with number two because if we have both Torians like at one and two, I do feel like Super Metroid is kind of like an upgraded version of the NES version. So at least Impact Crater, it does have that incredible room, the enemies, the music. So I think I could be okay ranking it at number two as well. Um, so yeah, that's good. That's a good spot for it. So there we go. I will say that I think that there's a giant divide between number three and number four on our list as it currently stands. So we've got Torian from Super Metroid number one, then Impact Crater, then Torian from Nestroid, and I think that there's a big gap between the rest of them because then you've got Hanubia, the Sky Temple, Oubliette, and the surface of SR388. So yeah. All right, my man, it's your pick. What do you got for us?
Well, we've done two of the mainline prime entries so far. Let's finish it off with some corruption,
Dude,
some
okay.
good old phase.
So I
Um,
have to admit something to you. In my ranking, so like I said, we kind of did this similar gimmick over on the Zelda cast, and we did the same thing where Allison and I were both kind of picking at random. But I do have to admit that I purposely did not pick the one that I thought could be a contender for number one until last. So I'm glad you picked it because I wouldn't have picked it until last because I think that this could be a contender for number one.
oh man, I think we might be in agreement. This is my favorite area, straight up. I love this place, man.
Okay, okay,
I love phase. Everything that I just said about the impact crater is amplified to like 20 in this area. Again, with the exception of the red phazon, which I really wish reappeared in this area. I think that would
yeah,
have been a really cool way to like once again bring everything back home. But you have so much other stuff going on. Not only is the area significantly bigger, you have a lot of enemies, and I think this is one of those instances where having a ton of enemies in the final area actually makes sense given the context of the game.
mm-hmm.
But you also have tons of lore stuff, including like deceased carcasses from other Metroid primes that evolved on the planet right before the final area. Like there's so much going on in this area. The phase theme, much like the impact crater, it's not very melodic, but again, it's bridging those diegetic and non-diegetic realities together. And yeah, I think this area is just a work of art, and I think by the end of this is going to be my number one definitively for sure.
It's a contender, absolutely. Like there's again, if you go down the list of everything that we were talking about, I think that it almost checks every box because it's got the unique, cool enemies that are there, and the phazon corrupted versions of these enemies. It's got a creepy, brooding theme that, much like a lot of these final themes, isn't like a piece of music so much as it's just like this kind of ominous collection of sounds. The aesthetic is so awesome. Like it's got, I mean, I think that Phazon looks pretty cool just in and of itself. It's like this bioluminescent, like glowing blue, dangerous looking substance. And I think that what really brings it home though is like the story behind it. And much like Super Metroid, this has like a way of conveying a story without really conveying like a whole lot. But it's just that it's the culmination of this entire Metroid Prime arc. You're there, you know that this stuff around you is killing you, and that throughout this game specifically, you have you've had to eject all this extra phazon out of your body lest it consume you, and you're going literally into like the belly of the beast to try and eradicate this once and for all. So I think that it has even more stakes than your average Metroid game has. So yeah, I like if you go down this list, it really does check almost every single box. So I think this I don't know, this would be a contender. If it's not number one, it's number two for me.
I actually want to go more into those stakes that you mentioned
Sure.
because corruption, probably my least favorite of the trilogy, despite how much I love this game. Probably my least favorite of the trilogy, and I'm really not a fan of how the hyper mode is implemented in the game until this final area. This is where I think that hyper mode concept is really like fully fulfilled, and you really start to feel those stakes of the hyper mode where you are at your absolute most powerful, but you're also on a clock. It genuinely feels like a one-way trip
Hmm.
when you land on phase. And there's even a really cool detail after you eject on all those phazon tanks, and your meter starts going up. If you actually go back and rescan your ship, it'll actually give you a lore entry that says that you are so corrupted at this point that your ship doesn't even recognize you as Samus Aran. And it's such a cool, creepy detail to show just to show how far you've gone. And it's
Yeah.
basically like, nope, you're either you got to do this now. It's either this or you're done, and you're in it for the long haul now. There's no going back, and I just think that's such a cool detail. And then there's also other cool stuff in the area, like I love. There's this one part where you fall down this really long shaft, and this really creepy H.R. Geiger esque character catches you, and you have to blast it before it eats you, so you can fall down the shaft even more. Just lots of cool sequences like that. So yeah, the
You know
more I
what?
talk about this, I'm very convinced this is going to be my number one for
I was
sure.
gonna say, I feel like Super Metroid rightly gets a lot of love in many, many different areas. And I don't know that Corruption gets the same. I know that Corruption doesn't get the same amount of love. So maybe on our list today we can. I think that they're like 1A and 1B. Like they're on the same level for me. But I think that for the purpose of our list and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, maybe we can have it at number one. How about that?
I think that's a fair premise.
Okay, well, what's not going to be at number one is our next entry, and that's the BSL main deck from Metroid Fusion. And Metroid Fusion is another game that unfortunately suffers a little bit from not really having a final area per se. Um, when and that's not to say that the final stretch of this game is bad by any means, because I do think that when you go and you get back up to the operations deck and you fight the SAX and you have to make your escape, that's actually a pretty cool sequence, but as a final area, it's quite lacking because I mean you've been there multiple times before. There's nothing really different about it. The music doesn't really elevate it by any means, and the story does give you some stakes to go back to that area. So I mean, I'll give points for that, but it doesn't really do it for me. I think that even if it could have been something as simple as like the lights went out on the BSL, or like there was like auxiliary power or flashing lights or like something to kind of give it a little bit more of a visual pop to signify that like this is the end of the game, I think that would have went a little ways. But I don't know. I don't know that as it currently stands in the criteria that you and I are ranking these final areas in, that I can rank this much higher than a lot of the entries on our list. I would probably put it personally below Sky Temple and above Oubliette. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I kind of look at this kind of similarly how I viewed Sky Temple. I think in the context of Fusion, I think it's fine, but I think to a lesser extent than Sky Temple. But yeah, in terms of like ranking the final areas, like I mean, what is there to rank really? It's
Yeah.
there's really only like there's one small room technically that you haven't really visited at this point, which is just the little control panel that activates the self destruct sequence. It's
Yeah.
really not it's not so much ranking the final area as it is ranking the final series of events in the.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty low.
I think I'll I think as a final area, I think I might actually rank this below Samus Returns as a final area, even though I like the sequence better than Samus Returns just on the premise of final area. I think this might be at the bottom of my list.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I can't argue that. You know, when you're looking at Samus Returns, the surface of 3R88, you've already been there. It's a short circumference, like it's a short trip. Uh, yeah, I guess I wasn't prepared to rank it dead last, but I'm not prepared to rank it very high, so I'm not gonna fight you on that. Um,
Yeah,
okay,
because unlike I was just gonna say, because unlike Sky Temple, whereas as a final area it leaves a lot to be desired. I still think in the context of that game, it's flawless. I think it does what it needs to do in that game. Fusion, I think there could have been more done with this sequence, even still. And that's why I'm kind of ranking it
yeah.
a little bit lower here.
Oh well, that's fair enough. Okay, so we got three areas left, four if we want to slip AM2R into here really quick. So take us away. Where are we going next?
Um, let's talk about Zero Mission.
Okay.
And actually, before we talk about the final area, technically Torian is not the final area in this game, but I still want to talk about a little bit of this because one thing that Zero Mission does in Torian, even though the area I think is the easiest of all the Torian areas, I love the atmosphere and tone of this, and I especially love how the Metroids will literally fade into an existence. I love the cutscene that plays as you go down the elevator, and just I love how that whole thing is
Cutscenes in this
interpreted.
game are
I just
so
wanted,
awesome. So
yeah,
I like I said,
it's
I
so
just finished a
cool.
Metroid Zero Mission ROM hack yesterday, and like the cutscenes are so wicked. It was such I was charmed watching them.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. But obviously, that's not the actual final area in this game. That goes to Chozodia slash the pirate ship. And overall, I think this might be in the middle of my list.
I agree.
This is a very mid tier area. If we're talking about escape sequences, very different story. But
Hmm.
that's for another date later. But as the area itself, I think I love the introduction of the final area. The introduction, the stealth sequence is top tier. I know you're not a fan of the Brinstar arrangement that plays throughout the game, and while
Mm.
I don't mind it, I also wish that it was something a little bit different instead of Brinstar. I think you could have had a more
Yeah.
positive, uplifting theme for it, but
Well,
again, I
I
don't
actually
mind
think
it.
it's too positive and uplifting. Like it's too bombastic. I think for what maybe I was expecting at this point of the game. Like I actually think that the song is fine. It just feels like it's played in the wrong area, you know, or it's maybe
Like
played too long.
it plays its hand too early.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. That this is like dead smack in the middle for me. Chozodia is such like a ginormous area that in my own headcanon, I kind of have like in my thoughts, I'm like, okay, like the final area starts after you beat the Chozo test and get your suit, and then you can do the rest of the game that way. Because I think that Chozodia, the area, the stealth sequence area, is really cool. I love that gimmick, and I know some people don't, but I really do. I really love that it brought something different to the Metroid gameplay. But I think that once you get the suit, the bombastic track keeps playing. Yes, you can explore like some different parts of the area, and like there's a lot of really cool expansions that you can get. But in our current criteria as a final area, I feel like it's very mid tier. I'm looking at our list, and I think I would put it below Metroid Dread. It could be convinced to put it below Metroid Prime 2, but that's kind of the areas that I'm looking at putting Chozodia in.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to put it too. Right in between Iterash and Prime Two. I think that's
Okay.
a
Yeah.
good placement for that.
Okay. Well, that is where Chozodia will
One
stay.
one thing I'll also say, I don't like the color scheme of the pirate ship. It's like there's a lot of bright pinks and purples and magentas, and it feels very not space pirate. You know what I mean? It feels I feel like they should have gone with a different color palette for that area.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I guess like I can see where maybe they wanted to add a little sizzle to like you can only have so many ships in a Metroid game like they before they kind of start looking the same. But I mean, I guess like when you're thinking about that too, like you have Norfair, you have Brinstar, you have Criteria in this game, which are like visually distinct from each other. So I guess they probably could have toned it down just a little bit because yeah, I guess now that I think about it thematically, I don't know many space pirates that might have. Oh, I don't know. Maybe they do. Who knows? Um, okay, so
I
we
mean,
only got.
canonically there are purple space pirates,
Yeah,
so
I mean, hey, maybe it's Maybe it's a thing. I don't know. All right. So we got, I was gonna say we should do the bottle ship, but since we might slide AM2R into here, maybe we should do the Queen's Lair from Metroid 2. And I think this is a middle one, but maybe upper middle for me, because I do think that there are some good things about it. There are some limitations that don't that stop it from reaching its full potential. How about that? Um,
Yeah.
I think that the area, just as a byproduct of the system that it was released on, the time when it was released, the area doesn't have much distinct visual pop to it. It looks like, I mean, it looks like the rest of the game, right? The sprite work for the Queen Metroid is awesome, and I'm giving a little bit of leeway to that because I think that that's important. But I don't know, like AM2R has. Should we just rank the genetics? Let's just make sure. Let's definitely rank that next because we
Mhm.
should talk about that. But I feel like in AM2R, the genetics laboratory, which is the final area of that game, like the nest, has a very distinct like color palette, and the music is very distinct, and it just kind of has like a little bit of a more like once you go from area 8 to, or once you go from area 7 to area 8, it feels like you're in the last area of the game, whereas this one kind of feels like it's just like a culmination of the rest of the game. And again, that's probably a lot of it is due to the system and the limitations and stuff like that, but I also feel like I can't really ignore it. The music is awesome, we'll say that music is definitely awesome, and the Queen boss music is awesome too. um so I think I would be inclined to rank this one under Torian from NES. And it's kind of like the upper half of the list. It still kind of got that palpable sense of danger and atmosphere, but it's not distinguished enough from the rest of the game where I think it's going to challenge like our upper echelon entries.
I think I'm gonna rank this one just below Chozodia, maybe equal to Chozodia. But I
Okay.
think it's gonna be about in that tier. I think from a gameplay sense, Chozodia. I think from gameplay, Chozodia wins that out, but from atmosphere, I think Metroid Two wins that out because I love the
Okay.
atmosphere of this area. But again, some of the art direction, just because of those Game Boy limitations,
Yeah.
feels like an amalgamation. It doesn't
Let's
really
let's
offer
split
a
the
lot of unique
difference.
identity.
Let's put it in between Dread and Zero Mission. Split the
I
difference
think that's
there.
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, if I can do like a 2-for-1 pick here, I want to transition to the genetics laboratory from AM2R because I think that was the realization of the intention behind this area, and I rank this like really
Yeah.
high, like number
This
3.
area is awesome.
This area is so awesome. It feels incredibly dangerous. The music is so creepy, like the oh, it's so good. There's story that's involved as well, which to be fair is also involved in the original, but it's so much better here. Where like your Metroid counter goes from 1, and then all of a sudden it's ballooning up, and you're like, oh my god, all of a sudden there's 10 Metroids around me, and they're the regular base Metroids, which is a really nice touch. So yeah, I feel like that is, and it kind of has the same thing as Torian 2, where like you can't go too fast, and you can't go guns a blazing through it. The sense of danger that you get as you kind of creep closer and closer and closer to the Queen Metroid is so palpable. I rank this like really high. I'm gonna put it number 3 overall. And if you fought for it higher,
It's also going to be my number 3 pick. No arguments here. Yeah,
okay,
this is going for me. It's going to be Phase, Super Torian, and then Genetics Lab. Yeah, I love this area so much. And also, again, not what we're ranking, but that Queen boss fight in AM2R, that is in my top 3 boss battles of all
it's
time.
awesome.
What a satisfying fight that is. But that is, again, for another discussion. Um, yeah, I especially love the storytelling with some of the broken tanks near the end. It foreshadows
Mm,
some of those extra Metroids that go loose. You'll see a bunch of ones that are still in stasis, but you'll see other ones that are broken just a few rooms before that. It's such a cool little detail that they put in there, and yeah, I mean, again, the new arrangements of that classic Metroid 2 music. You mentioned kind of the Metroid fight theme, but I really love that first thing when you enter the dun 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 dun, and I love that the kind of percussion that they added there that wasn't present in the original version.
mm,
It just feels very offbeat. Like a lot, the snare comes down on the ands instead of the 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it just makes that theme just feel way more chaotic and uncertain. than even the original one in the Game Boy. So yeah, nothing but positive things to say
Yeah.
about this area.
This is such a small, minor thing that I'm not sure anybody cares about but me. But like, one thing I love AM2R for is that it gives each area like a name, and it gives it like with a name. I feel like comes a little bit of a personality, and like I think that that is lacking in Metroid 2 and in Samus Returns. So like, you can go very distinctly through and you're like, okay, this is the tower, this is the Golden Temple, this is the distribution center, this is, like everything has like a name and a theme and an identity to it. And I think that that also helps propel this to like a lot higher than Samus Returns. It's actually ironic because like we have Samus Returns almost down near at the bottom and we have AM2R at the top, and it's basically the same game. So it is funny how that works, but I do think that this is an area where the sense of danger and of mystery and I think everything just really works for this final area. So yeah, okay, we got it in number 3, and we have one more to rank before we call it quits here. Technically, this is your pick, so I'll let you go ahead with the last final area that we're gonna do, and I'm curious to see where you're gonna rank it.
I mean, maybe I shouldn't have picked Prime 3. It feels like a crime that we're ranking the Metroid Other M. What do you even call this area?
I don't know.
The final secret lab.
Yeah, like the final secret area. So as we were talking about with Fusion, with Samus Returns, this is an area that does not have a defined final area, which is too bad. Even like the base game, if you're not considering the Fantoon fight like to be the true ending of this game, even that does not have like a final area that you need to go to. It's just
So
kind of
I'm
the bottle ship.
Yeah, I'm kind of counting like before the Fantoon fight, that secret part of the area where you go
Yeah.
through like the Mother Brain Rinkas, which I'll admit that's a cool touch there, a cool bit of fan service there. The Queen Metroid fight, not as cool as AM2R's fight, but still kind of cool. Should have done the original theme, just like the Samus Return should have done the original theme, but
Yeah.
um,
But even that, like, that's not the ending of the game. The ending of
I
Other M
know.
is that weird cutscene where like you have all these Federation soldiers and it's like this weird like you take control of Samus for 2 seconds and you pop MB in the head. It's so unsatisfying and anticlimactic.
Everyone talks about how like using the grapple beam on the Queen Metroid, that was like the part that threw them off, but the part that threw me off was that cutscene. I could not figure out what I was supposed to do there for
Yeah.
so long, and then I just kind of got lucky, and I was like, "That's it, really?
Well,
Okay."
so I mean, the good thing about that, like what I would define as the final area of Metroid Other M is like after you go back and you're like, I'm going to get Adam's helmet. Basically, everything that transpires after that is what I guess you could say is the final area, because you do have access to a couple rooms that I think you need the power bombs to gain access to, that will allow you to go in and get to the area where Fantoon is, and that's a great boss fight. But in separating that boss fight from the actual area, it's like this has nothing. I mean, it's got nothing. It's the same bottle ship that you've been traversing. You could copy and paste everything that we said about the BSL station and say that about the bottle ship, and I think for me it's a race to see which one is last. Unfortunately,
May as well call the bottle ship the bottom ship because it's going to the
is
bottom.
it going at the bottom for you?
It's sinking down. It's
Yeah,
sinking
so
down. It is not oil. It is not rising. It is going down.
I think that I was prepared to rank it second last, if only because, as we said with Super Metroid, that game gets a lot of praise, and we wanted to give a game that doesn't in Metroid Prime Corruption a lot of praise. And I feel like Other M already gets a lot of dung slung at it, and I think that
The difference is when we're talking about Prime 3, like FaZe absolutely deserves it, I think. Like that is a killer final area. Like this I mean this is like
killer for a different
we,
reason.
if we ranked this not in last, it would be the equivalent of giving Other M a participation trophy, and that almost feels more insulting than just being honest.
Well, I actually like I think that BSL and Bottle Ship are like neck and neck for bad final areas.
I would say at least BSL has satisfying story elements to that, whereas Other M, I cannot, definitely cannot say the same.
Well, I mean, you are there to get Adam's helmet, which I guess is a sentimental piece of, you know,
I guess
memorabilia.
this is also a different way because you're ranking the final you're ranking the post game sequence, whereas I'm ranking the final main game sequence of that area. So I guess that's another way
Well,
to look
I
at
mean,
it
I think if
too.
you're ranking the main game, then yeah, it's not even an area. It's just like a different part of the ship. And I do feel like the bottle ship does have some like fairly distinct air, like the pyrosphere, and like I keep on coming back to like Sector Zero should have been it, right? Like it should have been that area of the game where it's like, wow, this is like really cool. Like this is, and it just wasn't. So I think under my own criteria, I think I would put the secret area above the BSL because at least I don't know if this counts or not, but like yeah, at least you have that escape sequence, which is kind of cool, and you do it in the Zero suit, which is not something that's been done before. I'm not. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and argue for Metroid Other M's final escape. Like we're talking about the two bottom tier sequences or areas in the series. So I mean, I don't know. I what if you want to rank it last? Let's go ahead and rank it last. That's fine.
Down it goes.
All right. Okay. Well, this is our final list. Are you ready?
Let's go.
In last place, 12th, we have the Bottle Ship Secret Area from Metroid Other M. And just above that, in 11th place, we have the BSL main deck from Metroid Fusion. I feel like there is a gap from those two to the next one. So at number 10, we've got the nest/surface area of SR388 from Samus Returns. Number 9, we got Oubliette, which I don't think I mispronounced once badly on this show. So there we go. That's a win. At number 8, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh my! You know what? I'm wrong. I'm one off because we added the genetics laboratory. So this is actually at number 9. I'm sorry. So we got the bottle ship at number 13, BSL at 12. We've got the nest and surface area at 11. We got Oubliette at number 10, and we got the Sky Temple for Metroid Prime 2 at number 9. At number 8, we have Chozodia from Metroid Zero Mission. And I feel like there is another gap in the list here from when we get to the next batch. At number 7, we've got the Metroid Queen's Lair from Metroid 2. At number 6, we've got Hanubia/Itarash from Metroid Dread. I feel like there's another gap right there, kind of a sizable gap. We got number 5. We got Torian from Nestroid. We've got the Impact Crater from Metroid Prime 4, or from Metroid Prime 4, from Metroid Prime coming in at number 4.
That'd be a cool.
That would be cool.
Throwback.
Yeah, that would be badass. I'll take that. Number 3, we got the Genetics Laboratory from AM2R. Number 2, Torian from Super Metroid, and coming in at number 1, it's got its day in the sun. We've got the Planet Phase from Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I like this list. I think when I started this, like I said, I didn't put together my own list, but I had an idea that Torian and Phase would be really high. And I think it ended up in the right spots.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm just thinking about revisiting Impact Crater and Metroid Prime 4 now, and how like that would be such a cool story sequence because you wouldn't necessarily have to like tie Phase onto it, but like what if like the remains of the Impact Crater, Samus has to like find something else that was there that maybe ties into Metroid. I don't know. I think there's potential there.
Yeah,
I think that could be cool.
Yep. I'm sure whatever final area in Metroid Prime 4 we get is going to be awesome. My God, hopefully we get something for that game soon. But yeah, that's a fine looking list. I feel like we've put together here, Doom. Fine looking.
Yeah,
list.
I really like the way it turned out, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that we agree on pretty much every one of our picks for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there was a healthy give and take. There were only a few that we kind of peacefully negotiated on, but I think for the most part we definitely had the similar like this tier, this tier, this tier, and it was just ranging within. I think.
Yeah, if anything, I feel like our biggest disagreement is on Oubliette, however it's supposed to be pronounced. But like even then, because it's also on our lower tiers again.
Yeah,
it's a very peaceful negotiation.
All right, well, we want to hear what you guys would rank your final areas in the Metroid series. Let us know. Let us know over on Discord. Let us know over on Twitter. We would love to see what you think is number 1, 2, 3, and the whole way down. So make sure that you do that. We are going to get out of here, but of course we want you to check us out over on Twitter. At Omega Metroid Pod. I'm at Spateri316, and Doom is at Doominal Cross. Make sure that you're checking out OmegaMetroid.com. Like I said at the top of the show, we got tons of maps, we got tons of walkthroughs, guides, you name it, it's there. Latest news, original content, all of that good stuff. Make sure you check it out, as well as check out our Patreon page. As I also mentioned, we have a couple of bonus shows that are going up, a couple times a month. We got the Spiteri show, and we got the ROM Hack review show that's going to be up right before you guys listen to this. So if you feel like supporting the website, you got a few extra bucks that you wanted to part with, you get a lot of good stuff in return for that. So yeah, check that out. And that is going to do it for us. Of course, get the podcast wherever you get your pods. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, recommend, share, all that good stuff. And we will see you guys next week. Take care.